Picture this: a 7 months pregnant woman, standing in a ballroom filled with 400 of the most powerful people in the city. Her husband's hand connecting with her face. Not once, not twice, 3 times. And not a single person moved to help her. But here's what her billionaire husband didn't know. What he never saw coming. Her father was watching from across that ballroom, a man who had spent 30 years destroying the most untouchable criminals in America. A man who had been quietly gathering evidence for weeks. A man who was about to unleash a revenge so perfect, so devastating, it would leave you breathless. This is the story of Charlotte Whitmore. And trust me, you need to hear every single word. Because what happens next will restore your faith in justice. Charlotte Whitmore wasn't supposed to be this woman. 28 years old. Red hair that caught the light. Green eyes that used to sparkle with ambition. She'd given up a promising career in architecture to marry Preston Blackwell, the youngest self-made billionaire in tech. She thought she was building a partnership. Instead, she was walking into a trap. The morning started with joy. Dr. Rebecca Thornton's office smelled like lavender and possibility. Charlotte had arrived 15 minutes early, the way she always did, her hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. "Everything looks perfect," Dr. Thornton said, her voice warm with genuine happiness. Strong heartbeat. Good positioning. "Charlotte, you're doing everything right." Then it happened. The baby kicked. Not a flutter. Not a gentle movement. A real kick. Strong enough that Charlotte gasped. Strong enough that Dr. Thornton laughed with delight. "There she is," the doctor said. "She's saying hello." Charlotte had laughed too. Pure, uncomplicated joy. The kind she hadn't felt in months. Maybe years. She placed her hand on her belly and felt her daughter move again. Proof that something beautiful was growing inside her, despite everything else falling apart around her. She couldn't wait to tell Preston. Couldn't wait to share this perfect moment with the man she loved. What a fool she was. She drove home 20 minutes early. Canceled her lunch meeting. She wanted to surprise her husband with the news. Maybe they could celebrate. Maybe they could go to that Italian restaurant he loved. Maybe for once they could feel like the couple they used to be. The house was too quiet when she pulled into the driveway. Their housekeeper Rosa usually had music playing, salsa or cumbia or old American jazz. Today there was nothing but silence that pressed against Charlotte's ears like a warning. Her heels clicked against the marble foyer. The sound echoed off the vaulted ceilings, off the crystal chandelier that had cost more than most people's annual salaries. She set down her purse and called out for Rosa. No answer. Then she heard it. Laughter from upstairs. A woman's laugh. Not Rosa's deep, warm chuckle. This was different. Younger. Lighter. Intimate. The kind of laugh that belonged in bedrooms and dark corners, in places where secrets lived. Charlotte's hand went to her belly. Instinct. Protection. The baby moved again, as if sensing her mother's sudden tension. The walk up those stairs took forever. Each step felt like moving through water. Her hand gripped the iron railing so hard her knuckles went white. The carpet muffled her footsteps. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting long shadows that seemed to lean away from what she was about to discover. She almost turned back. Almost convinced herself she was imagining things. Almost told herself that the stress of pregnancy was making her hear things that weren't there. Almost. But Charlotte Whitmore had spent 28 years learning to trust her instincts. Learning to read rooms and people and situations. Learning that the quiet voice inside her head was usually right, even when she wished it wasn't. The master bathroom door stood open. Steam curled through the air like a ghost trying to escape. The scent of Charlotte's favorite perfume drifted into the hallway. Jasmine and vanilla. The perfume Preston had custom-made for her birthday last year. Sienna Drake stood at the vanity. Charlotte's vanity. Applying Charlotte's lipstick with careful precision. Wearing Charlotte's ivory silk robe. The one Preston had given her on their honeymoon in Bali. the one she'd worn on lazy Sunday mornings while Preston made pancakes and talked about the children they would have someday. Sienna turned slowly. Her expression held no embarrassment, no shame, no guilt, just mild surprise, like a hostess whose dinner guest had arrived early. "Oh," she said simply. "You're early. Get out of my house." Charlotte's voice didn't shake. Not yet. Years of board meetings and charity galas had taught her how to control her face, how to hide what she really felt, how to smile when she wanted to scream. Sienna set down the lipstick. Charlotte's lipstick. The expensive one from Paris that Preston had bought her for Christmas. She pulled the robe tighter around her slim frame. "Maybe we should wait for Preston," Sienna said calmly. "He can explain things better than I can." "There's nothing to explain. You have 5 minutes to get dressed and leave, or I'm calling the police." Sienna laughed. Actually laughed. The sound bounced off the marble tiles and glass shower door and the mirrors that reflected Charlotte's pale, shocked face back at her from a dozen angles. "And tell them what?" Sienna asked. "That your husband's girlfriend borrowed your robe?" The word hit Charlotte like a physical blow. Girlfriend. Not a one-time mistake. Not a moment of weakness. Not a drunken error that would never happen again. A girlfriend. An ongoing relationship. A parallel life running alongside Charlotte's marriage without her knowledge. Charlotte turned and walked to the bedroom. Sat on the edge of the bed she shared with Preston. The same bed where they'd conceived this baby during their anniversary trip to Napa. Where she thought they were rebuilding their connection after months of distance. Where she'd convinced herself that the problems in their marriage were temporary, fixable, normal. The same bed where Preston had probably brought Sienna 100 times before. While Charlotte was at foundation meetings, while she was visiting children's hospitals, while she was doing everything she could to be a good wife to a man who didn't deserve her. Her phone was in her hand before she realized she'd pulled it out. She called Preston. "Sweetheart." His voice was warm, concerned. The voice of a loving husband worried about his pregnant wife. "Is everything okay? How was the appointment? Is the baby? Come home now." A pause. Charlotte could hear office sounds in the background. Keyboards clicking, phones ringing. The hum of a building full of people who had no idea their boss was a monster. "Charlie, I'm in a meeting. Can this wait until—" "Now, Preston. Unless you want me to call my father instead." Another pause. Longer this time. Charlotte could almost hear him calculating, weighing options, deciding how to handle this unexpected development. "I'll be there in 40 minutes, he said finally. "Make it 20. She ended the call. Preston arrived in 43 minutes. Charlotte had counted every second. Had watched Sienna leave in a silver Mercedes that Charlotte had never seen before. The woman had paused at the door, looked back at Charlotte with something that might have been pity. Then she'd waved. Actually waved. Like they were neighbors. Like they were friends. Preston appeared in the bedroom doorway, still in his charcoal suit, still wearing the tie Charlotte had picked out that morning. Navy blue with small silver dots. His favorite. Their favorite. "I can explain," he said. Charlotte looked at this man she had married 3 years ago. This man she had moved across the country for. This man she had given up her career for. This man she had trusted with her future. She didn't recognize him at all. "Then explain," she said. Preston walked to the window. Looked out at the garden Charlotte had designed. The roses she'd planted herself. The fountain she'd chosen for its peaceful sound. The bench where she sat on summer evenings and imagined their children playing on the lawn. "Her name is Sienna Drake," Preston said, his voice flat, emotionless. "She works at the PR firm that handles Blackwell Industries. It started about 2 years ago. 2 years. The words echoed in Charlotte's head like a gunshot. 2 years. Before the wedding. Before the pregnancy. Their entire marriage had been a lie. Every kiss. Every I love you. Every promise. All of it built on a foundation of betrayal. She understands me, Preston continued, oblivious to the destruction his words were causing. Or maybe not oblivious. Maybe he knew exactly what he was doing. The pressure I'm under. The stress of running a company this size. You've been so focused on the foundation, the charity work, your family's legacy. He made it sound like an insult. Like her dedication to sick children was a character flaw. Like her desire to make a difference in the world was somehow a betrayal of him. I gave up my career for you, Charlotte said quietly. The words came from somewhere deep inside her. Somewhere she'd been hiding truths even from herself. I moved across the country. I left my friends, my family, everything I knew. I gave up everything to build a life with you. And I gave you everything. Preston's voice sharpened, the mask slipping just a little. The house, the clothes, the jewelry, the foundation funding. Do you think your little charity survives without my money? Do you think anyone would care about Charlotte Whitmore if she wasn't married to Preston Blackwell? Charlotte stood. Her legs felt unsteady, but she locked her knees, refused to show weakness, refused to let him see how deeply his words had cut. I want a divorce, she said. Preston's expression didn't change, not even a flicker. That's not going to happen, he said. You don't get to decide that. He stepped closer, too close. Charlotte could smell his cologne, the one she'd bought him for their anniversary, the one he'd worn on their first date, the one that now made her stomach turn. Actually, sweetheart, I do. His voice dropped lower, darker, a voice she'd never heard before. Because if you divorce me, I'll destroy your father, and I have everything I need to do it. Charlotte's blood went cold. Her father, Harrison Whitmore, 62 years old, former federal prosecutor, legal kingmaker, the man who had walked her down the aisle at her wedding to this monster. What are you talking about? She whispered. Preston smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just cornered his prey. The smile of a man who had been planning this moment for years. Let me show you something, he said. Something that will help you understand exactly how things are going to work from now on. He turned and walked toward his home office. Charlotte followed. What choice did she have? The baby kicked again, restless, unsettled, aware somehow that everything was about to change. The click of Preston's office door closing sounded like a lock turning on a prison cell. Charlotte stood in the center of the room. Preston's domain. Dark wood paneling that absorbed all light. Leather furniture that smelled like money and secrets. The faint scent of expensive cigars and old bourbon. She'd always hated this room. Something about it felt wrong. Felt hidden. Felt like a place where bad things happened and worse things were planned. Now she understood why. Preston walked to his mahogany desk and opened a drawer. He pulled out a manila folder, thick with papers. He spread them across the surface like a dealer laying out cards in a game only he knew the rules to. The Whitmore Foundation, he said, his voice pleasant, conversational. Your grandmother started it 60 years ago. Elizabeth Whitmore. Remarkable woman. Built something from nothing. It funds children's hospitals across 3 states, provides care for families who can't afford it. Very noble, very respectable. He looked up at her. His eyes were cold, empty. The eyes of a stranger wearing her husband's face. According to these documents, $32 million has been redirected from the foundation over the past 5 years. Offshore accounts, shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Cyprus, Luxembourg, all of it traceable to one person. He slid a paper toward her. Charlotte looked down. Her father's signature. Clear and unmistakable. The same signature she'd seen on birthday cards and permission slips, and the check he'd written for her wedding dress. Harrison James Whitmore. On a transfer authorization she had never seen before. He didn't sign that, she whispered. Prove it. Preston leaned back in his chair. Your father made a lot of enemies during his prosecutor days. Put away some very powerful people, cost them their fortunes, their freedom, their futures. There are people who would love nothing more than to see Harrison Whitmore in federal prison. And now they have the evidence to make it happen. This is forgery, Charlotte said, her voice shaking. This is fraud. My father would never. Your father would never what? Preston's eyebrows rose. Steal from sick children? Betray the foundation his mother built? Destroy his own family's legacy for personal gain? He stood, walked around the desk, stood close enough that Charlotte could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. The eyes that had once looked at her with what she'd thought was love. The thing about reputation, sweetheart, is that it only matters until the evidence says otherwise. Your father spent 30 years building a name for himself. 30 years of being the good guy, the righteous prosecutor, the man who couldn't be bought. But everyone can be bought. Everyone has a price. And once these documents go public, no one will remember the good he did. They'll only remember the crimes he committed. Why? Charlotte asked. Why would you do this? What did my father ever do to you? Insurance, Preston shrugged. When I married you, I knew your family would eventually become a liability. Old money always thinks it's better than new money. Your father never approved of me, never thought I was good enough for his precious daughter. I could see it every time he looked at me. The judgment, the doubt, the certainty that I would eventually disappoint you. So I created options. Leverage. A way to ensure that when the time came, I would have control. The gala is in 4 days, Preston said. The annual Whitmore Foundation benefit. 400 guests. The most important social event of the season. You will attend. You will smile. You will play the loving wife who supports her wonderful husband. And if you don't, then I release these documents to the FBI. Your father gets investigated. The foundation gets shut down. Every child depending on those hospitals loses their care. All because you couldn't swallow your pride and play nice. The phone call came at 2:17 in the morning. Charlotte hadn't been sleeping anyway. She'd moved to the guest room after Preston left. Couldn't stand the thought of lying in their bed. Charlie. Her brother's voice was rough with sleep and concern. I'm outside. Let me in. Owen Whitmore stood on her doorstep 5 minutes later. 32 years old, but looking older tonight. Dark circles under his eyes, jaw tight with worry. He wore jeans and a hoodie, like he'd dressed in the dark. A laptop bag hung over one shoulder. Dad called me, Owen said. He didn't wait for an invitation, just walked past her into the kitchen, started setting up his equipment on the island. 3 monitors, cables she didn't recognize, a keyboard with extra keys, things that blinked and hummed with purpose. Told me you sounded strange when you talked to him yesterday. Asked me to check on you. How much did he tell you? Charlotte asked. Nothing. You know Dad. He doesn't share unless he has to, keeps everything close to the chest. But I know my sister. Something's wrong. So tell me. Charlotte told him everything. The affair. The confrontation. The forged documents. Preston's threats. The FBI tip. The Gala deadline. Every detail she could remember. Every word Preston had said. Every implication she'd pieced together in the hours since. She talked for 47 minutes without stopping. Owen listened without interrupting. His fingers moved across the keyboard as she spoke, pulling up databases and records and things Charlotte didn't understand. When she finished, Owen cracked his knuckles. A habit from childhood. He only did it when he was about to solve a problem. Show me the documents, he said. Preston has them locked in his office. I don't have the key. Then we start with what we can access. Owen's fingers flew across the keyboard. Screens filled with numbers and code. Foundation financial records. Bank statements. Transfer logs. Corporate filings. If Preston created forgeries, there will be inconsistencies. Digital breadcrumbs he couldn't completely erase. Nobody's perfect. Not even billionaires who think they are. 3 hours later, Owen looked up from his screens. The documents are forgeries, he said. Sophisticated ones. Professional grade. The kind of work that costs 6 figures and takes months to produce. But forgeries nonetheless. Charlotte's knees went weak. She grabbed the counter for support. You're sure? Positive. Owen turned one monitor toward her. See these timestamps? They show when the files were created. The metadata embedded in the documents. Preston's forgeries are dated 5 years ago, but the actual creation timestamps are from the last 6 months. Someone created these documents recently, and then backdated them to look old. It's clever work. Would fool most investigators. But digital forensics don't lie. Can you prove it? In court? To the FBI? Given enough time, yes. I'd need to document everything. Create a chain of evidence. But there's something else, Charlie. Owen's jaw tightened. Something worse. Charlotte's stomach dropped. What? These forgeries weren't made for you. Owen switched to another screen. Lines of text. Email headers. Server logs. They were made for someone else. These files were sent to a federal server 3 weeks ago. Anonymous submission to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Preston already reported Dad, Charlotte whispered. Not yet. Owen pulled up another window. These things take time to process. The FBI gets thousands of anonymous tips. They have to verify sources. Check credibility. Prioritize cases, but the clock is ticking. If we don't get ahead of this, Dad could be facing federal charges by the end of the quarter. What do we do? Charlotte asked. First, we gather evidence. Owen started typing again. Fast. Purposeful. I'll dig into Preston's digital footprint. See if I can trace the original files. Find proof that he created them. There's always a trail. Always. And second, he looked at her. His eyes were their father's eyes. Sharp. Determined. Unafraid. We figure out what else Preston is hiding. Men like him don't stop at one crime. There's always more. We just have to find it. Charlotte's phone buzzed. She almost ignored it. Then she saw the preview. A text from an unknown number. Manhattan area code. I need to talk to you. It's about Preston. Please. The number wasn't in her contacts, but Charlotte recognized something in the message. Desperation. Fear. The same feelings churning in her own chest. Who is it? Owen asked. Charlotte showed him the screen. Could be a trap, he said. Could be an opportunity, Charlotte replied. She typed a response, her fingers steady despite the fear. Where and when? The reply came immediately. Brooklyn. Tomorrow afternoon. 2 o'clock. The coffee shop on Atlantic Avenue. Come alone. Charlotte looked at her brother. I'm going. Charlie. She knows things, Owen. Things we need to know. If there's even a chance she can help us, I have to take it. Owen studied her face. Looking for doubt. Looking for hesitation. Whatever he saw there made him nod slowly. Fine. But I'm tracking your phone. And if you're not back in 2 hours, I'm calling Dad. And if I call Dad, he's calling everyone he knows. Which is basically everyone. Charlotte managed a small smile. The first one in days. Deal. The coffee shop on Atlantic Avenue smelled like burned espresso and broken dreams. Charlotte arrived 10 minutes early and chose a table in the back corner, where she could see both exits. Her hand rested on her belly. The baby had been quiet all morning, as if she too was waiting. At exactly 2 p.m., a woman walked in. Young. 23, maybe 24. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Jeans and a Columbia University sweatshirt. She looked around the coffee shop with the nervous energy of someone who expected to be followed. Their eyes met. The woman walked over. Sat down without ordering anything. Mrs. Blackwell, she said. Thank you for coming. Who are you? Charlotte asked. My name is Emma Rodriguez. I worked as Preston's executive assistant for the past 2 years. She pulled an envelope from her bag. Set it on the table between them. I need you to know what he's planning, what he's done. Because if someone doesn't stop him, he's going to destroy a lot more lives than just yours. Why are you telling me this? Charlotte asked. Why now? Emma's hands were shaking. Because I have a little sister. She's 15, and yesterday Preston asked me to arrange a private meeting with her. Said he wanted to discuss internship opportunities. Mentorship. Her voice cracked. I've seen him do this before. With other young women. The pattern. The grooming. The manipulation. I stayed quiet because I needed the job. Because I was scared. But I can't let him hurt my sister. She pushed the envelope across the table. This is everything. Copies of emails. Financial records. Evidence of affairs with at least 7 other women. Documentation of the forged documents about your father. I watched him plan it, Mrs. Blackwell. I watched him hire the forensic accountant. I watched him create those files. And I have proof. Charlotte's fingers closed around the envelope. It was thick, heavy, the weight of Preston's sins collected into paper and ink. There's more, Emma continued. Preston has been embezzling from Blackwell Industries for years. Millions of dollars funneled into offshore accounts. Securities fraud, tax evasion, wire fraud. He's been using company funds to pay off the women he's had affairs with, to silence them, to make them disappear. Why give this to me? Charlotte asked. Why not go to the police? The FBI? Because Preston has connections. Powerful people who protect him. But you, Emma met her eyes. You're a Whitmore. Your father put away the head of organized crime in this city. Your family has credibility. Influence. If you go to the authorities with this information, they'll listen. If I do it, I'm just a disgruntled employee. He'll destroy me. Charlotte opened the envelope. Inside were hundreds of pages. Emails. Bank statements. Photographs. Text messages. Screenshots of conversations that would make Preston's crimes undeniable. The gala is in 3 days, Charlotte said quietly. He's forcing me to attend. To smile and play the loving wife while he threatens my family. Emma leaned forward. Then use it. Use the gala. 400 witnesses. The most powerful people in the city. Your father will be there, right? And probably half the federal judiciary. Give them a show they'll never forget. Charlotte looked at this young woman who had just handed her the keys to destroying Preston Blackwell, who had risked everything to protect her little sister, who had chosen courage when staying silent would have been safer. Thank you, Charlotte said. For this. For your bravery. Emma stood. Stop him, Mrs. Blackwell. Stop him before he hurts anyone else. She walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. Charlotte sat alone at the table, the envelope in front of her, and for the first time since she'd discovered Preston's affair, she felt something besides fear and betrayal. She felt hope. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of careful planning. Charlotte, Owen, and their father sat in Harrison Whitmore's study, the same room where Charlotte had studied for her SATs, where she'd told her parents she was engaged, where she'd announced her pregnancy. Now they were planning how to destroy her husband. Harrison Whitmore was everything Preston had feared. 62 years old with steel gray hair and eyes that could see through lies. For 30 years, he'd been a federal prosecutor who specialized in taking down criminals everyone said were untouchable. Mob bosses, corrupt politicians, Wall Street fraudsters who thought they were above the law. He'd put 43 people in federal prison. He'd never lost a case. Not once. And now, as he read through Emma's documents, his jaw tightened with the kind of controlled rage that Charlotte had only seen a handful of times in her life. The last time was when a drunk driver killed her mother's best friend and tried to buy his way out of charges. That driver was still in prison. He threatened you, Harrison said quietly. Too quietly. He forged documents to implicate me in federal crimes. He tried to use you as leverage. Dad, Charlotte started. No. Harrison looked at her. His eyes were fierce, protective. You don't apologize for this. You did nothing wrong. Preston Blackwell made the mistake of threatening my daughter, and now he's going to learn what happens when you underestimate a Whitmore. Owen had been working non-stop since Emma's meeting. He'd traced Preston's digital footprints across dozens of servers, found evidence of systematic fraud dating back 7 years, securities violations, tax evasion, money laundering, wire fraud. He's been stealing from his own company, Owen said, pulling up spreadsheets on his laptop, funneling money through shell corporations, using corporate funds to pay off mistresses. The board has no idea. His investors have no idea. If this goes public, Blackwell Industries will collapse. Good, Harrison said simply. Let it collapse. Men like Preston Blackwell build their empires on lies and manipulation. It's time for the truth. They spent the next 2 days building their case. Harrison called in favors from former colleagues at the FBI, the SEC, and the Attorney General's office. By the morning of the gala, arrest warrants were ready. Federal agents were standing by. All they needed was the right moment. He wants a show, Charlotte said on the morning of the gala. He wants me to smile and play the perfect wife in front of 400 people. So let's give him a show he'll never forget. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel glittered with old money and new power. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen. 500 roses, Charlotte had ordered them herself weeks ago, filled the room with the scent of promises and new beginnings. How fitting, Charlotte thought, that this was where it would all end. She wore a midnight blue gown that accommodated her pregnant belly. Diamonds at her throat, a gift from Preston's mother. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist. She looked every inch the billionaire's wife, the perfect trophy, the ideal accessory. But her eyes were cold as ice. Preston was already working the room, shaking hands with senators and CEOs, laughing at jokes, playing the part of the self-made billionaire philanthropist. He caught Charlotte's eye across the ballroom and smiled. That same charming smile that had convinced her to marry him, that had convinced her she was building a life with a good man. It was all a lie. She crossed the room to him. Let him take her hand. Let him kiss her cheek like the loving husband he pretended to be. You look beautiful, sweetheart, he whispered in her ear, close enough that only she could hear. I knew you'd make the right choice. I always do, Charlotte said. At 8:30 p.m., Charlotte took the stage. The room fell silent. 400 pairs of eyes turned toward her. She placed her hand on her belly, a gesture that softened faces, that reminded everyone she was carrying new life, that positioned her as vulnerable, sympathetic, trustworthy. Good evening, she said. Her voice was steady, clear. It carried to every corner of the ballroom. Thank you all for being here tonight to support the Whitmore Foundation. For 60 years, this foundation has been my family's legacy. My grandmother Elizabeth started it with a simple belief that every child deserves access to health care, regardless of their family's ability to pay. She paused. Let the words sink in. Saw Preston standing at the back of the room, his arms crossed, his expression confident. He thought he'd won. He thought she was about to give a speech praising his generosity and support. He was wrong. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration, Charlotte continued. A night to honor that legacy, to recognize the donors who make our work possible. But I can't stand here and celebrate when I've recently learned that someone has been using this foundation, my grandmother's legacy, as a weapon. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Preston's smile faltered. 3 weeks ago, someone submitted forged documents to the FBI, Charlotte said. Documents designed to frame my father, Harrison Whitmore, for embezzlement and fraud. Documents that would have destroyed his reputation. Shut down this foundation. Denied care to thousands of children. All to maintain control over me. The murmur grew louder. People were turning to each other. Phones were coming out. Preston was pushing through the crowd toward the stage. his face flushed with anger. That someone, Charlotte's voice grew stronger, is my husband. Preston Blackwell, the man many of you know as a self-made billionaire, a philanthropist, a visionary. She pulled out a folder, the same folder Emma had given her, held it up for everyone to see. But he's also a fraud, an embezzler, a man who has stolen millions from his own company, a man who has carried on affairs with at least 7 women during our marriage, some of them employees half his age. A man who threatened to destroy my family if I didn't smile and play the obedient wife. Preston reached the stage. Charlotte, his voice was low, dangerous. You need to stop talking. Right now. Charlotte looked at him. This man who had lied to her, betrayed her, threatened her family, tried to trap her in a cage made of fear and manipulation. No, she said simply. I don't think I will. That's when he slapped her. The sound echoed through the silent ballroom like a gunshot. Charlotte's head snapped to the side. Her cheek burned. The baby kicked violently, as if feeling her mother's pain. He hit her again. And again. 3 times in front of 400 witnesses. In front of senators and judges and CEOs and her father. Not a single person moved. They were frozen, shocked, unable to process what they were seeing. Except Harrison Whitmore. The fall. Harrison was across the ballroom in seconds. He grabbed Preston by the collar and threw him off the stage. Preston hit the floor hard. The sound of bone meeting marble was sickeningly clear. You put your hands on my daughter, Harrison said. His voice was quiet, deadly. You threatened my family. You forged documents to destroy my reputation. And you did it all while hiding behind a mask of respectability. He pulled something from his jacket pocket. A badge. FBI. Even though Harrison had retired years ago, he still had connections. Still had authority. Preston Blackwell, Harrison said, you're under arrest for wire fraud, securities fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, and attempted extortion. 4 FBI agents appeared from different corners of the ballroom. They'd been positioned there all night, waiting, watching, recording every moment on body cameras that would make it impossible for Preston to claim he was the victim. They handcuffed Preston while 400 people watched in stunned silence. He was screaming, threatening lawsuits, claiming it was all lies, claiming Charlotte was unstable, that pregnancy had made her crazy, that she'd fabricated everything. But there were 400 witnesses, and cameras, and Emma's documents, and Owen's digital forensics, and 7 other women who would come forward in the following days to tell their stories of how Preston had seduced them, used them, and discarded them. There was no escaping the truth. As they led Preston away, he looked back at Charlotte one last time. The charming mask was completely gone now. She saw what had been hiding underneath all along. Not a man. A monster, angry that his prey had escaped the trap. Charlotte touched her cheek where he'd hit her. It would bruise. The photographs would be everywhere by morning, evidence of who Preston Blackwell really was. Her father climbed onto the stage, wrapped his arms around her carefully, mindful of her belly. You're safe now, he whispered. I've got you. Charlotte let herself lean into her father's embrace. Let herself feel safe for the first time in months. The baby kicked again. Not in fear this time, but as if in agreement. As if saying, we did it, Mom. We survived. 6 months later, Charlotte stood in the nursery of her new apartment. Not the mansion she'd shared with Preston. This was smaller, warmer, hers. The walls were painted soft yellow. The crib was made of light wood. Everything was simple, clean, honest. Her daughter, Elizabeth Rose Whitmore, named after her great-grandmother, slept peacefully in her arms. 2 months old, perfect, innocent, proof that beauty could emerge from ashes. Preston was in federal prison awaiting trial. His company had collapsed. His assets had been frozen. The women he'd manipulated were telling their stories. The children's hospitals the foundation supported were still operating, funded now by legitimate donors who understood the importance of the work. And Charlotte? She'd gone back to school. Architecture. The career she'd abandoned to marry a man who never deserved her. She was designing hospitals now. Children's wings with lots of natural light and spaces for families to rest. Buildings that would heal, not hurt. Owen knocked on the door, peeked in. She asleep? Charlotte nodded. Carefully placed Elizabeth in her crib. Covered her with the soft blanket her father had bought. One with little stars embroidered along the edge. I got the test results back, Owen said quietly. The paternity test you asked for. Charlotte had wondered. After everything she'd learned about Preston's lies, she had to know if even this, her daughter, was what she thought it was. And? She asked. She's his, Owen said. Biologically, Preston is her father. Charlotte looked down at her sleeping daughter. She'd feared this answer. Feared that part of Preston would always be in Elizabeth. That the monster would cast a shadow over this innocent life. But then she remembered. Biology isn't destiny. Preston had shown her that. He'd been born into privilege and chose cruelty. Elizabeth would be born from trauma and could choose kindness. The choice would be hers. It doesn't matter, Charlotte said finally. He's not her father, not in any way that counts. I am her mother. Dad is her grandfather. You're her uncle. She's a Whitmore. That's what matters. Owen smiled. Yeah, she is. The lesson. 2 years later, Charlotte stood at a podium in front of a different ballroom. Different faces, different purpose. This was a women's shelter she'd helped design and fund. A place for women escaping dangerous relationships. A place where they could rebuild their lives. People ask me all the time, Charlotte said to the assembled crowd, how I had the courage to stand up to my husband that night. How I found the strength to speak the truth when I knew what it would cost me. She paused, looked out at the faces watching her. Women who had survived. Women who were still fighting. Women who needed to hear what she'd learned. The truth is, I didn't do it alone. I had my family. I had allies I didn't even know I had. I had a young woman named Emma who risked everything to give me the evidence I needed. I had resources and privilege that many women don't have. And I still almost stayed silent because fear is powerful. The desire to keep the peace, to not make waves, to be the good wife, it's so deeply ingrained in so many of us. She took a breath, felt Elizabeth, now 2 years old, squeeze her hand from beside her. But here's what I learned. Silence protects abusers. Silence protects men who think they're untouchable. Silence protects systems that value reputation over justice. And sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is simply tell the truth. Even when our voice shakes, even when we're terrified of the consequences, even when everyone tells us to be quiet and play nice. She looked directly at a young woman in the front row, someone who reminded her of herself 3 years ago, full of doubt and fear, and the desperate hope that things could change. You are not crazy, Charlotte said. You are not overreacting. You are not asking for too much by wanting to be treated with basic respect and dignity. And you are stronger than you know. Trust yourself. Build your support network. Document everything. And when you're ready, when it's safe, tell your truth. Because your voice matters. Your story matters. And you deserve so much better. The applause was thunderous. Charlotte picked up Elizabeth, held her daughter close. This little girl would grow up knowing that her mother fought back, that when faced with an impossible choice, Charlotte chose truth over comfort, justice over peace, freedom over a beautiful cage. And that made all the difference. Your voice is your power. Your truth is your weapon. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to be silent when someone expects you to accept the unacceptable. Trust yourself. Protect yourself. And remember, you are never as trapped as someone wants you to believe you are. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps us reach more people who need to hear stories of courage and transformation.